Ah, well, don't you all look nice? This angle. I've only had a back view of you all from the extreme corner before. In this little chat, I'm not going to confine myself to Pride and Prejudice. I'll range on over Northanger Abbey and a little bit about Emma and Sense and Sensibility as well. Okay, Pride and Prejudice. After I'd finished writing the series, I realised what it was that Jane Austen had written there. She'd written the first Darwinian novel. It's all about the selfish gene, and the gene in particular is in Mr. Darcy's breeches. Because before I'd written the adaptation, in fact what inspired me to write it was the conviction that this book wasn't about delicate, pretty little things and social comedy and little bits of archery in the garden, any of that. But it was quite a gutsy novel deep down about sex and money and class and survival of the fittest. And if you think about just the elements of the novel, and especially if you think about it, and I did want to think about it, from the men's point of view, because they're always, in all Jane Austen's novels, the perspective is always from a woman's point of view. But it's in a way about Darcy's dilemma, and his situation is he's one of the richest men in England. He's got a very powerful social situation to keep up, and he has expectations of him. And for his marriage, he's expected to enact a kind of dynastic deal with Lady Catherine's daughter, which is going to unite two ridiculously rich houses together. And that's what he's resigned himself to. And I think that's part of the reason why he's such a grumpy sod. Because he's not really looking forward to that one bit. But he seems pretty determined to go through with it because he thinks that's probably the right thing to do. And Lady Anne de Bourgh in the book is described as frail, sickly, silent, and untalented. Pretty brutal, really, because I mean she apart from money and social position, she's got almost nothing going for her, nobody really feels sorry for her, including Jane Austen, so we won't either. But Darcy thinks that's his duty to marry her, but something keeps making him follow Elizabeth around. He's almost like a dog who's, I'm sorry to be vulgar about that, who's just picked up the scent of the bitch that he must mate with, and what he's responding to is the life force and the energy, the intellect. She's a terrific specimen physically and mentally, and she's a worthy opponent. If they were animals, they'd be play fighting. Imagine them as oh God, I'm getting out of control. This is almost going to be the Joe Wright movie again. But you know what I mean, don't you? That Elizabeth reacts aggressively to him, but in a playful sort of way, because she's not engaged particularly at the beginning. She doesn't like him, and she's making fun of him, and she's enjoying putting him down. He feels her blows because he cares about what she thinks of him from quite an early stage, even though he doesn't like her, his situation. And so it's very clear that that it's his desire for her, before he even likes her, long before he begins to love her, that is driving the story. Because Elizabeth doesn't drive the story, it's Darcy, or what's happening inside Darcy that he can't control. So it's not surprising that people want to write about Jane Austen and zombies and things like that, because it's about irrational forces. And Richard Dawkins, or indeed Charles Darwin, would say this is natural selection occurring, that whether he wants to or not, nature is driving him towards his ideal mate, and they will have children who will be healthy and intelligent and will revive the Darcy line. So that's the theoretical basis for my adaptation, which only occurred to me some while after I'd finished writing it. I said, God, what insight I had there. Unconsciously, but I don't think anybody has ever suggested that before about Pride and Prejudice, but I'm absolutely convinced that that's what it is. Now, in terms of writing and emphasising Darcy's point of view, of course, I don't mean I leave Elizabeth's point of view out altogether, but Jane Austen, of course, famously didn't write any scenes in which men were with other men or men were on their own, but I thought it would be nice to give us moments where we could be with Darcy and experience the world a little bit alongside him. And also, I was pretty shamelessly wanting to get him out of those tight clothes and those, buttoned up to the neck thing, and show him as often as possible as a natural man, as an ordinary human being. No, an extraordinary human being, I really mean, and as a body as well as a brain in a suit. So I would do all that kind of thing, and it gives us a chance to guess that Darcy might be a different sort. People who are seeing it for the first time to wonder about Darcy and think maybe he's okay, because we learn that he's the best of men very late on in a reading of the novel, and then we can go back and read it all over again and look for those little subtle clues that she leaves. And so his haughtiness and his arrogance and his resentful temper, which is actually a bad thing to have, isn't it? He nurses grudges, can be seen in the context of what he really is. The beginning of the novel is all in scenes, and it's mostly from Elizabeth's point of view. A big difficulty that I came across once I'd written the 3 episodes, and oddly enough, there was a big gap between my writing the first half of the adaptation and the second half, to do with, it's boring, I'll tell you as quickly as I can. At first, we sold the adaptation to ITV, and they said, okay, write 3 episodes and we'll make up our minds whether we're going to do it. I wrote the 3 episodes. The head of drama was all for it, but the head of ITV was saying, no, we're not ready for Jane Austen on ITV at the moment. ITV is kind of a bit more down market and a lot more commercial than the BBC. And so we got the scripts back, took them to the BBC, and the head of drama at the BBC then said, I'm a bloke, I don't like Jane Austen very much. And then he said, well, all right, you can do it, but you've got to do Middlemarch first, because it's more manly. Yeah, he said it's about a man who rides into a town and starts the National Health Service. So let's wait to look at it. So I had to do Middlemarch first, which was great to do that, and then I went back to Pride and Prejudice, and which had been a joy to write the first 3 episodes. They've just whizzed by, and full of lovely scenes which were already in the book, and all I had to do was put those cheeky little bits in between, you know, like Elizabeth playing with the doggy, and Darcy in his bath, and all those things like that. And then I came to the second half, and I think, what is this? Because everybody is buggering off to different parts of the country, writing each other these great long letters. I think, where are the scenes? You know, what am I going to do? And almost straight away after the proposal, and as we all know, and as we've just seen from the 2005 movie, Darcy writes her a letter, and it's an absolutely crucial letter, because it sort of completely explains his point of view. So we've got to deal with it in some way, but every problem is an opportunity in disguise. As Robert McKee, the script guru, quite often tells us in his seminars, because I'd been to one of those, and I learnt some profound lessons from Robert. I really did, even though I got really fed up with him as a person, but that's another story. So I thought, what we have to do with this, it gives us another opportunity to really get to know Darcy. Why is he such an unpleasant man socially? And the reason is not. I think it's a terrible mistake, as they were toying with it, but it was a bit of a mix-up in the 2005 thing. They didn't know quite what they wanted to do, but I think they were trying to show him as shy. And a shy hero, that doesn't work very well, does it? But a proud hero, a difficult hero, a suspicious hero, that does work. And so what he is, he's not shy, he's not just naturally nasty. What he is wounded. He's wounded, and wounded is good. Strong but wounded, that's a hero. We agree, don't we? And a lot of the wound comes from Wickham, because the story he tells really is of having had a rather lonely childhood, one friend who let him down over and over and over, and to the extent of very nearly successfully seducing his 15-year-old sister. And so I think what strengthened the adaptation very much and got us to understand Darcy was actually seeing this, was actually showing it as a flashback. And we get the opportunity to create the character, really, of Georgiana, because although she's in the book, she's, in a way, hardly there. And you need to see these kind of stories, I think, on the screen to appreciate that she did get taken away to the seaside. If you show the seaside, it makes it realer somehow. And so we get to know Georgiana, and then that you know, does a lot, because you can show the affection between brother and sister, because we might be worried whether Darcy is emotionally expressive enough for Elizabeth, because we want Elizabeth to have a guy who's really going to love her and cuddle her properly and everything else that lovers do. And so there's the opportunity of seeing him being physically tender with his little sister, and you think, yeah, actually this guy is probably all right. So that was really the work that went into that. Of course, it was a very long letter, and it was in two halves. And in the letter, he started off with the bits that were very painful for Elizabeth to read, which were about how awful her family were. And so, but I decided to reverse the order, so that the first, which was all about Darcy writing the letter, and we get a lot of, we get the flashbacks, and also we keep coming back to close-ups of Darcy, who starts off in full evening dress and finishes up with nothing but an undershirt on. Well, I think he might have something on down below, but anyway, and it's kind of symbolic of him, you know, that we know him more and more intimately by the end of the letter, and he's totally exposed to us, and we feel quite differently about him probably from the way we had before. So that's the aim anyway. And then I did the second half of the letter, which I'm not going to show a clip of, from Elizabeth's point of view, reading it, and Elizabeth reading the words of the letter and seeing, remembering the party that he's describing in an exaggerated, horrible way, you know, as she sees it from Darcy's point of view. Anyway, let's see if I can get this clip to work. It takes a bit of time to wake up. Here it is.
Be not alarmed, madam, on receiving this letter, that it contain any repetition of those sentiments or renewal of those offers which were, this evening, so disgusting to you.
How's that? Too loud, all right?
But I must be allowed to defend myself against the charges laid at my door. In particular, those relating to Mr. Wickham, which, if true, would indeed be grievous, but are wholly without foundation, and which I can only refute by laying before you his connection with my family. Mr. Wickham is the son of a very respectable man, who had the management of our family estates, and my own father was fond of him, and held him in high esteem. We played together as boys. After his father's early death, my father supported him at school and afterwards at Cambridge, and hoped he would make the church his profession. But by then, George Wickham's habits were as dissolute as his manners were engaging. My own excellent father died 5 years ago, and his attachment to Mr. Wickham was to the last so steady that he desired that a valuable family living might be his as soon as it was vacant. Mr. Wickham declined any interest in the church as a career, but requested and was granted the sum of £3,000 instead of the living. He expressed an intention of studying the law. I wished, rather than believed him to be sincere.
Thank you. I'm most exceedingly obliged.
All connection between us seemed now dissolved.
Georgiana.
Being now free from all restraint, his life was one of idleness and dissipation. How he lived, I know not. But last summer, our paths crossed again under the most painful circumstances, which I myself would wish to forget. My sister, Georgiana, who is more than 10 years my junior, was left to the guardianship of Colonel Fitzwilliam and myself. About a year ago, she was taken from school to Ramsgate and placed in the care of a Mrs. Young, in whose character we were most unhappily deceived. And thither also went Mr. Wickham, undoubtedly by design. She was persuaded to believe herself in love and to consent to an elopement. She was then but 15 years old. A day or two before the intended elopement, I joined them unexpectedly. Unable to support the idea of grieving a brother whom she looked up to almost as a father, she acknowledged the whole plan to me at once. You may imagine what I felt and how I acted. Mr. Wickham left the place immediately.
Come.
Mr. Wickham relinquished his object, which was, of course, my sister's fortune of £30,000. The secondary motive must have been to revenge himself on me. Had he succeeded, his revenge would have been complete indeed. This, madam, is a faithful narrative of all my dealings with Mr. Wickham.
And the embodiment of Georgiana and Amelia Fox in, I think it was about the second, thing she'd ever done, which makes her into a real character, and that really managed to set up what is my favourite scene in the whole of the 6 episodes, which is the scene in the music room at Pemberley, where you get Georgiana playing the piano, and those wonderful glances across the room from Elizabeth and Darcy, which we will get on to now. Wake up. Oh no!
Yeah, I might have to just pop it in.
Sorry about that.
So beautifully. Not very beautifully, not faithfully at all. You must have seen how I fudged and slurred my way through the difficult passages. Any deficiencies? It's a beautiful instrument, though.
My brother gave it to me this week. He is so good. I don't deserve it.
I'm sure you do. Your brother thinks you do. But as you know, he is never wrong. Now, it's your turn. Oh, I absolutely insist.
In front of all these people. I will play, but please don't make me sing.
If you like.
Pray, Miss Eliza, are the militia still quartered at Meryton?
No, they are encamped at Brighton for the summer. That must be a great loss for your family. We are enduring it as best we can, Miss Bingley.
I should have thought one gentleman's absence might have caused particular pangs.
I can't imagine who you mean.
I understood that certain ladies found the society of Mr. Wickham curiously agreeable.
I'm so sorry. I'm neglecting you. Can you play with me where to turn the pages?
There, harmony.
That one again and again. I do actually still get moved by that. And it's a brilliant bit of writing by Jane Austen that Miss Bingley thinks she's really getting one in at Elizabeth, and she just doesn't realise that it's Georgiana who's getting wounded by her remarks, and I think what enhances it in the adaptation is we already kind of know Georgiana, so we kind of feel for her as well. And Elizabeth rescues her, and Darcy is grateful and relaxes, and then Elizabeth gives him a look which encourages him to think that he has got a chance, and that plotting is so spot on after that more or less the next day he goes up, he does. He goes off to the inn at Lambton, intending to propose. No, it doesn't say in the book, but that must be what he's going to do, to renew his proposal. But then he finds Elizabeth in a tremendous state because she's just got the letter from Jane about Lydia having run off with Wickham, and brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. I wish I could. I wish I could write novels. That's why it's so wonderful to adapt a good one. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about Pride and Prejudice today, unless people have got questions afterwards. But I'm moving on to have a look at some of the other ones. Emma was the next one that I adapted, and in fact I found I had this huge appetite and wanted to adapt Emma. I was wanting to do it in the read-through. I was thinking, who can we get to play Emma? I really want to do this because it's a terrific book. It's wonderful, complex. Well, as you know, it's a wonderful detective story, and it's a love story, and it's a character study of Emma, and it's an interesting departure from her. What you might think of her template plot. In her template plot, is a kind of Cinderella story in which a lovely but disadvantaged heroine has a number of obstacles to overcome, often embodied in the person of a rich bitch, like Miss Bingley, for example. In Emma, the rich bitch is Emma, and in fact Jane Fairfax is in the Cinderella position, you know, misunderstood, overlooked, slighted, especially by Emma, yes, and Emma has to come to an understanding of herself and other people. And now here's a confession. You know that Jane Austen, of course, said nobody much except myself were like Emma, but all we JASNA sort of people and Jane Austen say, oh no, I love Emma. Well, I don't love Emma. It took me a big effort to love her, because she really, really is seriously awful. She is a snob. She doesn't care about other people. She hardly sees other people except for herself and Mr. Knightley as real people at all. She treats them like toys to play with. You go there and you go there and you go there, and it's always me deciding because I'm Emma, she's handsome and rich, but I don't really think she is all that clever. I mean, she's certainly not very perceptive either about other people or herself, because I mean she doesn't really spot that thing about Mr. Knightley. You know, that she has feelings for him which are, you know, not entirely sisterly. Although she keeps saying we are sister almost, or we're not sister and brother and sister, or we are, you know, etc., etc. What was I going to say? Yeah, that's the thing about really preparing something and writing it out, because then you can have a look and read it out. I was particularly engaged, of course, with the age difference between Emma and Mr. Knightley, and just all this business that he's long been a friend of the family and has been a frequent visitor to the house for many years. Why did he come? Yeah. Why has he been coming for all these years? Can't be to see her dad, can it? Except for, you know, social reasons, you know, obligations. And of course, when Emma was a little girl, sort of when he was in his late teens and they'd been close, he must have known her when she was a baby. And Jane Austen tells us he's been in love with her for some time, some years. How many years? How old is she? 20, 21? Certain at 20, I think. Yeah, right, well, 3 years would be all right, wouldn't it? But, you know, much earlier than that, not. So, and then I started thinking, you know, how does Emma, you know, because she's another of these alpha females, isn't she? Like Elizabeth, I mean, she is handsome, rich, she's got bags of personality, she's dominant, not just because of her social position, just because she naturally assumes it, she takes it, she's a... so how did she get that way? How did Mr. Woodhouse, who's like a little woodlouse, how did he produce a daughter like that? I mean, Emma's mum must have been really something, mustn't she? And what was Mr. Knightley coming for all these years? So we've been hearing this. So I thought, what if we imagined a kind of deep south version of oh, Miss Knightley, sure like Miss Emma, you know. And then, no, he can't be a natural father, can he? So forget all that, but it was just, I just thought it was a very intriguing situation, and sometimes various productions in the casting get smooth over this by in fact casting them pretty close together in age. We wanted to go as young as we could with Emma and have Knightley much older. We did think he wasn't that old, Mark Strong, but he's got a very mature-looking face. And in fact, we're going to come to the effect his face had on the baby in a minute. Sorry if you've heard this one before, but I always have to tell it. And so I devised a little scene to emphasise that this curious thing that Knightley was already a sort of adult, or pretty well an adult, when Emma was a baby. So there was an opportunity to do it because when Mr. John Knightley and his family arrived, there's lots of babies and little kids running around. So I thought I'd write this little scene with Emma holding the baby, and it was just after she and Knightley had been quarrelling about something, about Robert, what's his name, the farmer, and I thought they could have a conversation over the baby, and Knightley could say, I once held you in my arms, thus, Emma, and they could make a little joke about it, and the audience could appreciate the curiosity of the situation, I guess. And I wrote it. I was quite pleased with it, and it went on, and everybody liked it. But it was actually hell to shoot, because things often don't go as they're supposed to go with the filming. And what went wrong with the filming of this one is the baby didn't like Mr. Knightley. I don't know quite what it was, but Mark has got very, very strong features, and in fact he's making masses and masses of money at the moment playing villains in big blockbuster movies. He's nearly always a killer. So the baby must have seen something that Hollywood later recognised. Because what happened was, every time she handed the baby to Mark, the baby would take one look and freak out like that. And so they thought, they tried several times with the proper baby, with the actor baby, and then that didn't do. So they borrowed a baby from somebody in the village and dressed it all up in the clothes, handed it this. That baby didn't like it. And poor old Mark was getting really upset. and you know, time is money, and it was all ticking by, and the art director said, never mind, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make a bean baby, and nobody's going to tell the difference. And so they sent the third assistant director down to the village shop to get beans to stuff the bean baby. And he got a trolley and he filled it up with beans, overcut it, got to the checkout. So, oh, that's a lot of beans you got there. Said, I know, but it's to make a baby. So God knows what acted to the diet of the Cotswold village it was filmed in. But, so they got back and they made the bean baby, and they shot the scene. The first half, when Emma's got the baby, it's the real baby. And then as they cut to Knightley getting the baby, you get a back view of the bean baby. And nobody ever noticed that. And neither did you, did you? Oh, you did. But only those of you who knew. But when you do know, you can see just the beginning of the baby, the real baby, starting to howl, and when you see the back view of the bean baby, it's a bean baby. Sorry about the delay on this. I hope it's going to work this time.
She makes no noise. You look well, that's Emma.
Good night. Good night.
Shall we take you? Yes, we will, sir. Yes, we will.
You and I must not be enemies.
No. You may do wrong, and I may be angry with you, but you and I shall never be enemies.
You forget that I have not been proved wrong. But I do hope that Mr. Martin is not very disappointed.
A man could not be more so.
Then indeed I am very sorry.
No, Isabella.
I'm going to move on and say a little bit about Northanger Abbey now, which is a delightful novel to adapt. Not many problems. I think the only thing that I was really trying to do was try to show that it's not just a kind of lightweight thing. It's not just a send-up of the Gothic novel. There is a deep side to it, and maybe a bit of a dark side too. Catherine Morland is a lovely girl, quite silly, but she's got such good heart, and she's got a good instinct, and she absolutely loves indulging herself with these Gothic novels and imagining dreadful things, and we get all that comedy like the Laundry List. But in fact, in going to the Tilney family, she senses something horrible has happened here, and she's like imagining a murder. But what it is that General Tilney is a villain of the most ordinary kind, in the sense that he's a cold-hearted sod, really, who really wore his poor wife down by his lack of affection and his mercenary nature, and more or less destroyed her health until she wasted away, and he's also cruel to his, or at least uncaring about his son and daughter, but of course Catherine imagines a kind of Gothic melodrama about it. She's right in essence, but of course stupidly wrong in the detail. A sort of little local problem in a way was that I'm, of course, people like you know all about Gothic novels, but I'm always thinking, first of all, when I'm adapting, about an audience who haven't not only read about Gothic novels, they haven't even read any Jane Austen, they don't know quite where they are. So how to get across what a Gothic novel was like, and what Catherine was imagining, and so the thing is to show some of Catherine's fantasies, some of her eagerness when kind of discussing these things, and also imagining herself in a Gothic novel. So I'm going to show a little clip of Catherine and her friend Isabella talking about it, and then Catherine having a sort of bit of a Gothic dream, or based on reading The Monk, which was John Thorpe's favourite novel. And if you haven't read The Monk, let me tell you that it really is a pretty filthy book. People get up to dreadful things in it. Anyway, also, I suppose one reason is that you've got two absolutely delightful young actresses at a very early stage in their career. Felicity Jones and Carey Mulligan. Carey Mulligan's such a big star now, but she was very happy to play Isabella Thorpe in those days. It's one of the great things about the BBC is they'll let you cast very young actresses straight out of drama school, which makes them so much more believable in the parts, I think, because everybody thinks, ooh, that's the real character, rather than thinking he is so-and-so doing famous, what's his name? Sorry, I'm not very good on the vocabulary this afternoon, am I? There's been too much of this what's his name and sort of thing. I do apologise. Yeah, this time I want to move on. Oh God, I can't see anything. Sunglasses going to help, are they? We'll get there. There it is. It's a homemade thing, made by my pal George, who's almost as inept as I am, but not quite. Here they are. It's what I mean by one of those hair and shoulders scenes.
Lord, what would the men think if they could see us now?
How can I ever face the Tonys again?
And I mustn't be cross with John, dearest one. Do you know, he told me he liked you better than any girl he had ever seen. And he thinks you're the prettiest girl in Bath.
Don't know why he should think that.
No need for false modesty. Now, how far have you got on with Godolpho?
I've just got to the Black Veil.
The Black Veil. Well, I wouldn't tell you what's behind it, not for the world. And when you've finished it, you will read The Monk. That's my brother's favourite, you know.
Yes, he spoke of it. Is it really very horrid?
It is the most horrid, shocking thing in all the world. Ambrosio the monk begins very holy, but is drawn into vice by Matilda, and she gives him a magic branch by which he can pass through walls and into Antonia's bedroom. It's too shocking. I should blush to tell you. Just read it yourself.
The friar pronounced the magic words, and a thick smoke arose over the magic mirror. At length he beheld Antonia's lovely form. She was undressing to bathe herself, and the amorous monk had full opportunity to observe the voluptuous contours and admirable symmetry of her person as she drew off her last garment. At this moment a tame linnet flew towards her, nestled its head between her breasts, and nibbled them in wanton play. Ambrosio could bear no more. The blood boiled in his veins, and a raging fire rushed through his limbs. "I must possess her," he cried. "No, no, Ambrosio. I shall no longer be able to combat my passions. I am convinced with every moment that I have but one alternative. I must enjoy you or die."
Sorry about the sound and the lip sync on that. Not one of George's finer moments. Then we come to, I suppose, what you could call the climax of Northanger Abbey, when Henry finds Catherine upstairs in deceased Mrs. Tilney's bedroom, trying to find clues to a murder mystery. She's so cute, isn't she, Felicity Jones? It's lovely.
Might I ask how you come to be here all alone?
I wanted to see your mother's room. Eleanor was going to show me, but your father prevented us.
And so you thought you'd come and see for yourself?
Yes.
I suppose Eleanor has talked to you about my mother?
Yes. But that is not very much, but what she did say was, her dying so suddenly, and none of you being at home, and I thought perhaps your father had not been very fond of her.
And from these circumstances you infer some negligence? Or something even worse? Then let me reassure you, Catherine, my mother's illness was sudden. And Eleanor was from home, but I was here throughout. And so was my brother Frederick.
Oh.
Our mother received every possible attention. Our physician was satisfied that nothing more could be done for her. The matter was deeply distressing, as you may imagine.
Yes, of course. But your father, was he distressed?
For a time, greatly so. She had had to bear a great deal from him, but when she was dead, he felt her loss.
I'm very glad of it. It would have been very shocking if he
had what? If I understand you rightly, You have been suspecting my father of a crime so dreadful.
You said yourself the house is full of secrets.
And so you decided that my father must be a murderer. And to you, at least, you show nothing but kindness. Catherine, how could you? What sort of a fevered imagination must you have? Perhaps, after all, it is possible to read too many novels.
No, never mind, Catherine. We know it's going to be all right in the end. It's always been a favourite of mine, that Northanger Abbey. It's, I suppose my other innovation in that was that I was quite convinced that Captain Frederick Tilney successfully seduced Isabella Thorpe, because well, really, the Tilney brother and sister, Henry and Eleanor, make it pretty clear that Frederick only had one thing in mind in his pursuit of her, and I thought Isabella's silly enough to fall for it. And I thought maybe we could even work up a little bit of sympathy for her if we have the morning after scene where she's saying, and are we engaged now? If it says, put your clothes on, Miss Thorpe. Okay, a little bit about Sense and Sensibility. I don't know whether you've whether anybody who was in Texas heard me say dreadful things about Jane Austen before, but sorry if this is going to shock you. But very imperfect novel, Sense and Sensibility. Wonderful, two wonderful sisters, beautifully done. That's fine. A first-class villain, Willoughby, a glamorous shit. Nobody needs to change him in the least. But the big problems come with the chaps who get the girls in the end. Colonel Brandon and Edward Ferrars. She laid it on too thick with the rheumatism and the too old for this, too old for that, with Colonel Brandon. And it's too much of a leap of the imagination, really, I think, to how could Marianne go from being so desperately in love with Willoughby to being genuinely in love with Brandon. Really, somebody's really got to do a lot of hard work, and clearly Jane wasn't feeling up to it. I may be lynched after this. As for Edward, yeah, it's just not clear what Eleanor would see in him. He presents himself anyway as tongue-tied, no good at reading poetry, and that's about it. He obviously does like Eleanor, so that's one thing in his favour. But then, of course, yes, he goes away and he doesn't phone, he doesn't text, he doesn't. We eventually find out why all this is, that he's trapped in an engagement and he needs to behave honourably. But something's got to be done to make him more appealing. Also, I think those, you know, in the early stages, when he first appears, it was apparent to their mother that an attachment was growing between Edward and her oldest daughter. Okay, let's hear the conversations. What do they say to each other? You know, why are they drawn together? Nothing. Jane Austen gives us nothing. I've got to do all the work. Well, I suppose that's my job. They're paying me. Yes, that's fine. So, but it really did need to be done. What is it that draws them together? What is appealing about Edward? Obviously, you casting is 50% of it. You just cast somebody who looks really nice, or you think he looks really nice, and hope for the best, and hope everybody else will. But he can't just moon about doing nothing. So I had to, you know, write some scenes, and then the development process of Sense and Sensibility was actually such fun, because I was working with a producer I like very much called Anne Pivchevich, and we had a succession of very good script editors. We went through 3 of them. They all got pregnant. I don't know what it was, and we just spent, and so we kept on getting a different female point of view, and we had endless conversations and lunches and drinks, and they were all basically around what makes a woman attracted to a man, really, and what kind of behaviour in a man is going to keep him going. And in the course of these conversations, I realised I'd been doing it wrong all my life. You know. Making too much effort, you know, too eager. Always show a bit of interest, back off completely. That's the way that. So all these women said. So at any rate, backing off completely is quite good because both Willoughby knows how to back off completely, and Edward knows how. Well, he has to back off completely from time to time. Yes. So there's that, but he had to do much. So I thought really we have to butch them up a bit. But let's go to the simpatico bit. A conversation. Oddly, usually when I'm adapting Jane Austen, I use almost all Jane's dialogue. Certainly in Pride and Prejudice. Sense and Sensibility is the one in which I've used her dialogue the least, because I don't know. Sometimes it's somehow it never, except in certain crucial moments. Marianne seeing Willoughby at the party is, you know, spot on moment, brilliant. But a lot of them, and this one is a conversation that just she forgot to write entirely. I'm a boastful man, aren't I? Oh no, let's do that first. Yeah. No, I won't. I'll do what I said I was going to do.
It is her house now. She must do as she sees fit, I suppose.
She's doing her level best to refurbish me, too. I'm a grave disappointment to my family, Miss Dashwood. Fanny would like me to be a great man of some sort. Important. Talked about. Riding around in a barouche.
And you don't see yourself in a barouche?
A pony and trap would do me very well. I want to go into the church, you see. Quiet country parish. But that's not smart enough for my family. I think we all have to find our own ways to be happy.
So do I. And I think I prefer your notion of happiness.
Do you? Good. Quiet country parish it is, then. This must be a very hard time for you. Your father's death. My own father died when I was 17. I was like a boat that had lost its anchor. We must all have someone to listen to us, to understand what we feel.
Not fair.
What's not fair?
Henry's got my pony. Nobody asked me if he could ride him. And he's pulling his nuts.
Meg, he doesn't mean any harm. And you're much too big now for such a little horse.
This is a matter of principle.
You are quite right. I will speak to my sister about it. Meanwhile, how about setting your sights a bit higher than a pony?
Yeah, that was one of those, director did such a lot there, he was so good. He's called John Alexander. All those little bits at the end, you know, where the scene moves across and it's from dressing the hair to making the puppets to doing the theatre, and that kind of does an awful lot of the job of the growing relationship between Ellen and Edward, that they're the audience and they're laughing happily together. So that was making us believe that this is all right. But still, Anne Pivovich and her gang of script editors were saying, he's not manly enough yet. So I thought that the only thing to do was to write a log-splitting scene. One of my very favourite movies is Shane, that old Alan West, and there's a wonderful log-splitting scene in that. You know, chap really, gets his muscles out and boom, and you think, yeah, that's a real man. So I wrote one. Again.
Come here at all. But I did want to see you all.
Well, we're very happy that you have come.
We were waiting and waiting for you to come.
I'm sorry that it took me so long.
I never saw you wear a ring before, Edward. Or is that your sister's hair? thought her hair had been lighter.
Yes, it's funny, sad. The setting casts a different shade on it, I suppose.
It's another wet shirt scene, you see.
I thought it was Thomas, our servant.
He's gone to the village. I saw the lot. I enjoyed this work. A man can relieve his feelings. And you have very little help here.
We manage.
Yes, but if I'm...
What is it?
Nothing. Nothing I can speak of. I should never have come here.
I hate his hat, don't you? Yeah, the music in this is music in all of them. Of course, is very important. The Pride and Prejudice is very light and dancey and almost sort of Mozartian. And in Emma, the music was very much based on folk music and old dance tunes. The music in Sense and Sensibility is deliberately quite really lush and romantic, and I always thought slightly pinched from the wonderful music in Last of the Mohicans. Do you know that? Which is one of those films, whenever it comes on the television, I say to myself, I'll just watch 2 minutes of this and finish up watching the whole lot, because it's great. I will show you that that title sequence, which is sort of slightly controversial element, but I did want to, it's a very anti-Willoughby adaptation. I wanted to hit home, you know, just how rotten Willoughby is, because he seduces this schoolgirl and just leaves her in the cottage, as it turns out pregnant, and forgets all about her. Doesn't leave his name and number or, you know, contact details. Forgets the whole thing until it catches up with him, and then you know, and I thought I really wanted to ram that home, and so I wrote the scene afterwards with her with the baby. This poor little girl, you know, still saying, "Oh, when he sees his baby, won't he perhaps come back?" And come round and says, "I'm afraid not, dear. You know, he's getting married to Miss So-and-so with 40,000. Brutal stories they are, aren't they? All the sub-stories, the stories that just get referred to obliquely at the back are all about dreadful things happening. You know, the abyss that our girls could fall into if things went wrong. The only thing that I thought went slightly wrong with this opening sequence was that the actual features of the girl could be mistaken for Eleanor's features, I thought, so it might cause a bit of confusion with audiences unfamiliar with the story, but anyway. It's a very sort of un-Jane Austen way to start, which has sort of appealed to me.
Do you truly love
Edwards thinks you're a child still. But we know better than that, don't we? Very soon.
But when?
Oh, yes. You get what I mean about the music, don't you? It's all, you know, sort of Irish stroke, American almost, and very, very sweeping, and also the setting for when they moved to the cottage. They just found this cottage which was right by the sea, you know, battered by winds, and it rained the whole time, which is, that wet shirt scene wasn't meant to be a wet shirt scene. You know, it's just the rain poured down for about 3 weeks without stopping. But it's, I think that's one of the ones that I felt very happy with that. And it's particularly nice when the director contributes such a lot. You know, normally I tend to think, yeah, he did just what I wanted of the director, but John Alexander really did a lot more and just contributed such a lot. So I've gone on quite a long time, so I'll stop now, but I am happy to answer questions.